Beautiful. Marvel vs. Capcom 2, an eternal classic in the eyes of many. Some might say its reputation is a bit overblown, which is why I feel it necessary to go over its eccentricities with a fine-tooth comb. What?
Hey, get out of there!
What are you doing?
Get the fuck out of here!
Good heavens!
Get out of here, idiot! Marvel vs. Capcom is back!
Ready?
I feel like I'm dreaming, truly. I really never thought that Capcom would be allowed to acknowledge these games again. What with the failure of Infinite and Disney breathing down their necks. But it's real. We actually have a way to legally play these games on modern platforms on the way. And despite my short break from this retrospective, I still have a ton to say about the series, especially this one. Hell, this is one of the main things I was looking forward to when I originally started this channel over 3 weeks ago. The break I took was mainly due to other games I wanted to talk about, along with the fact that despite this not even being close to a job for me, I now have an audience, so I should probably be dancing to the music that they would prefer. However, I'm not only back on my MVC kick, there is not a single game I want to talk about right now more than Marvel vs. Capcom 2. So even if this video only gets 5 views, it will be absolutely worth my while. Plus, after that last video, I really need to talk about a good fighting game. So when I was a kid camping with my family, there was of course that one Marvel vs. Capcom 1 machine, but a few miles down was another beach that had another beach house. There was an inflatable water slide, one of those overpriced concession stands with hot dogs and fruity popsicles, and there was this old shack that to me was the greatest place on earth, because they had a bunch of arcade machines. Most probably were garbage or didn't work, but they had Mortal Kombat 3, and more importantly, they had Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Now, when I was a kid, I barely remembered a difference between the first and second Marvel vs. games, probably because I was so stupid that any flashing light in front of me was enough to entertain my pea-brain. However, I did notice the huge character selection, and it was this one that my family members who were my age would play with me. I really loved those moments. It was my first real fighting game, my first real experience going head-to-head with other people, and my first realization that, wow, I suck at fighting games. See, what Street Fighter is for fundamentals, what Tekken is for creative combos in a 3D space, MVC2 is the poster child for fast-paced, combo-heavy, tag-based team gameplay. While previous games in the series slowly got faster and faster, with more and more new mechanics to what was originally akin to Street Fighter Alpha, this game fully separates itself from any other series at the time. Everything is different. It went from evolving the same formula to making something all its own, and I think that's why it has such a legacy. No other fighting game at the time was really like this, at least none that blew up in the same way. No matter how rare arcades get, if there is one and it has a substantial amount of games, it's surprising to not see a cabinet of this game still kicking. And what's insane is that it's actually still pretty accessible. So let's dive in. Let's look at what's changed, what stands out, and most importantly, how this game still stands as a masterwork of a fighting game. I don't think I need to point this part out like it's a surprise, as it's what the game uses as a huge draw, and it's what sets it apart the second you enter your quarter in. It's the roster. This series has stuck with around 17 characters per game, sometimes a few secret ones here and there, but for the most part, it's a consistently decently sized cast. However, it's still a little funny, as for the most part, these games are reusing sprites. Sure, the first MVC had some brand new ones, but the games were based on just, well, we have all these sprites, let's toss them together. And yet still pretty small rosters, very conservative despite the massive sprite libraries they had. Capcom was the king of arcade fighters, so they had a lot to work with. Maybe they were just totally focused on perfectly balancing the game so they wouldn't overdo— oh fuck. Yeah, obviously, it's gigantic. Not just for the time, but even today. 56 playable characters. Some with brand new sprites, but many are just ripped from their original games, which is honestly totally fine. If you've got those resources, you have the opportunity for something insane, and Capcom took it. But what's great is it doesn't feel like a bunch of stuff smashed together with no thought. Every character plays differently, and each one could have something you might like. This makes everyone's choice of team totally different, especially casually where people aren't beholden to a meta. Now, this sort of thing can also be intimidating. After all, how are you going to choose a main from a roster this big? Also, you have to learn that many matchups? That's impossible. Fuck this game. Cole, I hate you. And while you may think that at first, another of this game's main draws for me makes learning it a lot easier, and that's the controls being immaculate. Okay, so I'd like to amend some things from the previous videos. Now, there's not a lot to say about those original MVC videos I made nowadays besides, well, they're pretty bad, but the main aspect I would change is my fundamental misunderstanding of how fighting games like those work. See, my experience with fighting games for a long time were more combo-heavy, flashy games. My most played traditional fighter is Dragon Ball FighterZ, a game directly based off of Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It's the only fighting game where I've ever managed to get to an above-average tier of gameplay. Not that I'm insanely good by any means, not at all, but it was the only one where I fully understood how to play, what to do, and all of the mechanics involved. So when I would play other fighting games and I'd inevitably suck because the knowledge from one doesn't always completely transfer, I was really frustrated. That shows in those older videos. I talk about how I have no idea what I'm doing and that I definitely suck because I'm not going nutty with combos. But considering those games are based more off of Street Fighter, especially the first two, that wasn't how I should have gone into them. It took me learning a bit more in games like Street Fighter 6 to understand what these games actually aim to be. And while yeah, high level play can be a lot more combo heavy and infinites can fly, I don't think that from a casual level, the way that I approach these games, that's what I should have been aiming for. I misunderstood those games, and I apologize. But one thing that was always, and still at some points even now frustrates me, is that 6 attack button layout. Having 6 different normal attack buttons can be really confusing for those who lack experience or have issues with memorization, and it can heavily mess with the natural learning curve these games have, which is why with Marvel 2, I'm in heaven. This game instead goes for 4 normal attack buttons, 2 lights and 2 heavies, with 2 buttons used for assists. This is so much easier to grasp for me, and I think it allows people to get in and start having fun with less frustration. Because the roster is so massive as well, the moves characters use have been simplified. Mediums are now second hits and light combos. Special moves are usually limited to around 3 per character, and don't usually get much more complicated than a quarter circle or DP input. It makes choosing a character so much less daunting, as you don't need to think, fuck, I hope this character isn't too complicated. Not to say complicated characters don't exist. I don't really understand characters like Magneto, for example, but I don't need to, because I have more than enough that I do understand. Again, that massive roster is working together with the easier to understand controls to create a game much more ideal for hopping in and going a few rounds with friends. I never get that feeling of, am I doing this right? And for someone who over the last year has really pushed to understand fighting games in my personal time, that's a huge deal to me. Again, not to criticize the 6-button layout. I've personally really been enjoying Street Fighter nowadays, and I'm getting better at them, but these controls are much easier for me to understand. And they also make the game's main draw easier to understand as well, which is the fact that combos are your main way of dealing heavy damage. Before, if you got a combo, it was around 3 hits and did solid damage. Here, once the poking and zoning stages end, someone is getting thrown into the air for 5 to 6 hits before being shot back down. Combos are your main way of getting substantial damage fast. After all, there's 3 characters per team, and you need to get rid of them as fast as possible. What's great though is the way that combos work are very easy to understand. Most characters have a few attacks that chain together and then a launcher. You jump after that launcher and the game will draw you close to the opponent automatically, to which you can then do a short light to heavy air combo and slam them back down, to which you can then apply pressure to do it again. Not all characters have it as easy. Thanos, who I get more into later, has a launcher, but it doesn't play as much of a part. However, his specials not only give you good ground damage, but assists can launch for you. Each character, despite each of them being actively different and unique, will have a way to do decent combos without much hassle. And for those who want to, the combo system can be taken incredibly far. Moves cancel very easily into one another, and supers can end combos just as easily. With all of these basics understood, tons of people have drawn out loops, long combos, and new strategies once they get to a high level, but that never discounts the easy base gameplay that new players can get accustomed to, and intermediate players will adapt to and use like second nature. And in my eyes, that's how you do accessibility. Now, with these universal tools and its long-lasting impact, this game has to be incredibly balanced, right? Oh. I just used this joke a couple videos ago, didn't I? Not exactly. This game is pretty broken. Look at this tier list. This shit is crazy uneven. But that doesn't actually mean these characters are unviable, except roll. Every character for the most part will have something going for them, no matter the tier. I mostly use mid to low tier characters, and I can get shit done because of their specific synergies and assists. And that's a huge thing. Assists can make otherwise less than stellar characters have niches, and hell, it can make amazing characters even better. Where in Marvel vs. Street Fighter, assists were inconsistent, and in MVC1, game, they were random if you didn't know what to press. Here, your characters are both assists and normal fighters. This is the game that truly started the point, mid, and anchor character selections, as each character will have a role usually based on meter usage and how useful their assist is. For example, Ken can be decent at point, he's got solid damage and is pretty easy to play without being too meter hungry. However, his Shoryuken assist is a great anti-air, so I prefer to run him as a mid. Captain Commando is pretty great all around, but his assist is fantastic, so you at least want him in the mid position, maybe even as anchor so you can use that assist constantly. Dr. Doom got his start here as an amazing assist, and his fantastic supers make him a great anchor. And then of course we get into who I like and personally use. I tend to stick with this: Mega Man on point, Thanos on anchor, and I tend to switch up my middle depending on what I need. Mega Man has a decent assist but nothing special, and while his supers are good, he doesn't need that meter as much as other characters, so he makes a really great point character. His zoning is incredibly easy, as Mega Buster is still one button with no extra input. However, his stubby attacks can make it hard for him to pressure when he's close up. That's where Thanos comes in. Thanos is a character I originally chose just for his bubble assist alone. It locks the enemy in place for a free combo or super, and for someone like Mega Man, that's really good. As an anchor though is where I truly fell in love with it. Thanos doesn't have insane combos, but he does have good ways of closing distance with his big claps, and more than anything, his supers are very powerful. All of them serve to do something good, whether it be heavy pressure, range options, punishes, or combo enders. And if you can get him out with a lot of bar, he goes insane, which is why I like him on anchor. He's not starving for assists, but the extra meter at the end of a game is what he needs, meaning he works perfectly as cleanup crew, and early on, he works as a great support. For my middle, it depends on what I'm feeling and who I'm fighting. I enjoy Spider-Man a lot in this position, as he synergizes well with my other characters, whether with his web assist or his Shoryu assist. Plus his combos are easy and he moves very fast. This is probably my favorite rendition of him. If my opponent is really fond of flying around in the air though, I'll use Ken and fully punish that. Or if I just need them knocked down, I'll use Colossus. Ken is a very solid option, as he's easy to pick and toss on most teams, where Colossus is a bit limited in terms of range, but he hits hard, he has armor, and he's a solid assist. I really enjoy the character picking process here, as you can always find one character that synergizes with another, and can always find fun strategies no matter what tier your choices lie in, unless you're playing his role. And that's another thing. I love this game because of these characters. I can choose similar ones in other games sometimes, yeah, but I'm never gonna get this exact team, this exact playstyle, the same versatility, any of that. I love other team fighters, yes. Like I said, I love DBFZ a lot, but I don't play a similar team there by any means. These characters are so much more than the functions that they represent. They feel incredibly unique, and I feel that if you go with one that you like, it won't take you long to find what you need to build a solid team of 3. What adds even more is just the overall speed of the game. It's amazing that a game based on combos can be this fast and still work comfortably. I think that what the speed really helps is the neutral game. For intermediate and high level players and viewers, the neutral game in fighting games is very important, but for newer players, it can seem pretty boring. It's just two idiots jumping around and zoning until someone messes up, right? Hell, games like Dragon Ball FighterZ have basically dropped having a neutral state altogether. But in a game like MVC2, the neutral is exciting because everything is moving so fast. Zoners have flashy moves that come out quickly, so getting in seems like a struggle, until smart assist uses or just good defensive play can get the other player in, forcing the zoner into a defensive position. One combo links into another, a smart super will reset things, and it's all small moments that make an overall match much more exciting. It's not just about who wins overall, it's small skirmishes happening one after another, aided by the speed and combo system. Uncle Dane recently made a video talking about how a game like Team Fortress 2 is made of small moments for each players that make up a larger whole, and I think what MVC2 nails is focusing on individual spots in a match, which make it so when the match is over, everyone takes a deep breath and then remembers those specific moments. I'm not saying other fighting games don't have this, quite the opposite. Nobody really talks about the full match between Daigo and Justin Wong, but they do remember that small moment, and for good reason. It's just that for me, I think with MVC2, it's most immediately noticeable, and I really love that about it. One thing, and probably the only thing, that I do think is a step back in this game though, is its music. Now before you misconstrue my words, this game's soundtrack is absolutely fantastic. It's iconic, it's catchy, I love it. Some of my favorites being the iconic player select screen, the carnival stage, and my personal favorite is the swamp stage. But even then, just about every song is fantastic. I very much enjoyed using it for this video. The issue is, I'm not personally a big fan of the music being stage specific instead of character specific. I loved those moments of comebacks or just good plays with my mains and having their themes playing in the background. It made for very dramatic fights in terms of atmosphere. But here, it's always the same song if you're on that specific stage. Good songs, but less impactful. Would asking for each character to have a theme be asking too much? Well, before MVC3, probably. But it's still just something I can't shake. That said, it's still good stuff. I think Marvel vs. Capcom 2 really is a fantastic time, even today, 2 decades later. It's probably my favorite overall game in the series. Everything, the massive roster, the gameplay, the systems, and the speed, all work so well to create a truly unique experience that has without a doubt stood the test of time. Which is why it hurts so much that the only real ways you could play it were through emulation or shelling out tons of cash. I don't mind emulation, of course. After all, not only have all of my MVC videos been recorded using it, but the community on Fightcade is fantastic. Tons of people waiting for matches, willing to give advice, or just chilling and talking create a fantastic and welcoming atmosphere. Hell, they helped me figure out my team, and I'm sure they'd help you as well. But a game like this being locked away in a vault was really sad to me. A game with this kind of impact should be constantly ported to everything all the time, yet because of other factors, it just wasn't around. Those factors, of course, being twofold, Disney being Disney, and MVCI being overall a failure. It made it so Marvel vs. Capcom as a whole was in complete limbo, and I expected this video to end originally by saying, it's a great time, sucks you can't really play it on modern platforms. But that's why this collection is so important. MVC exists again. Even if the series doesn't get another game, the games that do exist have a future, with rollback on modern consoles. That's such an insane thought. I never thought we'd get a modern MVC2 release, even less the games that came before it. And with games like MVC3 and MVCI still available through digital stores or physical copies, it's going to be possible to play all of these games on one platform, and that's an incredible thing. I hope this series thrives again. I hope Marvel and Capcom see the celebration from the collection and give some more life to it. And hey, maybe I'll even talk about more of these games if you guys are interested. The next game is honestly insanely intimidating to me, and if I'm being honest, Infinite is the game I started my YouTube channel to talk about. So maybe I'll see you then. But for now, I'm never coming back.